I mean, if it's a Salesforce, I'm going to be a developer. Maybe if I'm doing the certifications with my experience, I might be like an architect or whoever in the future. But I don't think I would get into the same position as I would get in like a smaller company that's going to be growing into something bigger in future.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Analysis Paralysis. I'm here with Sai. We had met on an online app that connects kind of professionals. It's somewhat like a LinkedIn equivalent, and he is a Salesforce developer. So we kind of just went into discussion about CRM, where we see these massive companies like Salesforce going, ProsperWorks, the smaller companies focusing on the small mid-market. And we just kind of had a discussion about the space. Sai, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Alex.
Great. Cool. Yeah. So I'm curious about your background and how did you get started in this space?
Sure. I've done my graduation in the telecommunications, and I felt that, like a software is like a light source for most of the electronic devices. So I thought I just moved on to the computer science field, and I did my master's and, graduate studies in computer information systems. Then in one of my courses, I came across the Salesforce to my cloud computing course. And I thought this is the right thing. And based on, I had a little experience in the market research, and I know these kind of, collaborated the interest in the computer science and the market research. And I thought the Salesforce is like a right platform for me to concentrate on. Then I just started learning more about the Salesforce, and I got pretty fascinated and started looking for a job in that, and finally landed a job in Salesforce. And right after my master's, I started working for Salesforce on Salesforce through a consultation partner for a huge insurance company.
You started, I guess, it sounds like in kind of the marketing space and then the marketing side of Salesforce. And then I guess when you see Salesforce, you see a true CRM. It's not just sales and marketing. It's really like even operations. Like you can tailor Salesforce to go from, before the person becomes a customer or even a lead all the way up to them, like they're an existing customer and you're giving them a service and you need to track them or even just managing throughout a project. And I think that's the powerful thing about CRM where, like sales is an important aspect to it. And that's how I got involved with it as well. But then you start seeing how much you could build a process inside of the CRM, and business process that's such a broad thing. Every single company has a business process, regardless of whether or not they have it documented and built out to a CRM. So that's definitely interesting.
Yeah, I totally agree with that because, taking Salesforce into consideration because they're into it's like a much wider platform. They got like a really wide spectrum of things that you can actually do with Salesforce. It's not just CRM. I think because they got in you got analytics in that. You got Einstein, which is like a similar to Watson, which is AI. They're introducing that one, so it would actually automatically give you recommendations about how you can make your pages. The user interface, whatever you're building for the end users and all that. So, that every day for every release, because Salesforce usually does 2 releases every year. And with every release, they're coming up with something much smarter, much better way to interact with the end users. And it just keeps making life much easier for all these industries out there.
So what do you think the next step of CRM is? Because it's an interesting thing. Like we're playing around with the idea of AI and machine learning, and is the goal of a CRM eventually where you go into it and then it tells you like, hey, these are the 10 people you should focus on following up with today because running machine learning, all of these data points have hit and like they are a perfect opportunity at this moment in time right now. Like is that the goal of CRM or is it supposed to be more ingrained in like what do you think?
I think they're looking for much above that because what you're saying is sort of already exists. Because let's say with the Einstein, it would actually give you a much better recommendations about the leads. Turning the opportunities and leads into opportunities and all that. Salesforce kind of actually does. It's like a different edition that you have to pay more for in Salesforce.
Yep.
I think they already do. Like even the Watson. Let's just keep the CRM aside. Like if you look at the health domain, they're actually already doing that. Something that monitors the patients. Something that helps the doctors, doctor and the patient interaction much easier, and something that helps the doctors to actually concentrate with to let the doctors know which patient they should be concentrating on. And I think because I'm currently working in an insurance industry right
Mm-hmm.
now. So, and they're actually using a different kind of analytics right here already for, for a much better interaction between the, the health service providers
Mm-hmm.
and the customers who are actually using all those kind of policies and all that. So, I mean, everyone got their own choices and like picks to use the kind of analytics they want. I think it's pretty much everywhere. And the only thing the Salesforce does much better is actually integrating that analytics. They actually came up with their own analytics, so it makes the industry's life much easier, so that they don't really have to go out there into the field and look for the right analytics, and they have to and does a background check, like if we can actually integrate this into their current CRM or not. I
Mm-hmm.
think Salesforce does this part much better because they actually came up with their own thing. So I think
Okay.
that's where it's actually leading now.
So I mean, it seems like really the truth of the matter is that there's so many companies, so many old companies and new that they can utilize this software in some regard, and it can already do so much. Salesforce, these other CRMs that exist, they can do so much if you actually have someone kind of customize it and learn your business processes and implement it. It's just a lot of companies don't actually have them in place, and a lot of older companies like Salesforce may be running with them, but it may have not been a proper install, a proper process. A lot of like they may have just decided, I want to save the money instead of hiring someone to configure it for us, and I just want to do it internally. Their data could be a mess, and they may not actually be getting out of it what they potentially could be. So it sounds like a lot of this just comes down to kind of using it properly because it can already do so much if you know how to use it.
Exactly, exactly. I mean, you just need to figure out the ways to actually utilize the whole package that you actually got, been given.
Mm-hmm.
So there are like I told you, there are different, like a wide spectrum of ways you can actually utilize it in. Uh, and if you're an expanding business right now in industry, I think I would say this is a right CRM to choose from, like, because you don't really have to stop at where you started. You can just keep expanding, and you don't really
Mm-hmm.
have to go for something else because you already got a whole package, and you can keep, the more sophisticated you become, and the package you already have is already a sophisticated one, so you can just keep expanding it the way you are developing. So
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 what is the
already
size of the like the target kind of market that you guys are going after? Like, are these enterprise, large businesses? Like maybe
Oh, this the one that we are currently working on it is really a huge
okay,
market. Yeah, I mean, we got like thousands of end users that
okay,
actually interact with I would say maybe hundreds of thousands of other end customers. Because
okay.
currently I'm working on a service platform right now, and I would say Salesforce makes the life of these people actually using the service platform a lot easier, using the CTI, which is a like computer telephonic integration, where you can actually interact with
Mm-hmm.
the customer,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and do a handoff, like a transfer to the other user if you can't handle that task,
Mm-hmm.
and or like recording the data.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of easier ways to interact with the customer when you are actually the end user of using this service platform,
Mm-hmm.
and the way you can develop it in the developer perspective. I think there are certain limits, certain governing limits, depending upon the size of business that you're working on.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, it's pretty good with whatever you pick from the Salesforce,
Mm-hmm. So
because they already come with a certain number of limits, and it's actually pretty good for a really large scale business.
so what is the part of Salesforce that you like the most? Is it the integration aspect? Is it the business process development for a company? Is it the problem solving? Like, what really made you, I guess, fall in love with Salesforce? 'Cause it's not just Salesforce; it's the concept of business process, CRM, automation, integration. Like, what about that kind of made you fall in love with the industry?
um I would say I just well the the fascination actually started from the marketing cloud, like I told you.
Mm-hmm.
Then I thought it was only on the marketing cloud. Then as every day, like as a step by step, when I came to know about like more ways, and not only this, I mean, the ways you can actually use it on the sales surveys and the communities, then it got me really excited, because I thought this was just bounded to the marketing.
Mm-hmm.
Then I was like, oh wow, you can actually do so many things, and these are some things that are mandatory. I mean, there are they're going to be there in every industry. Like
Mm-hmm.
marketing is like a mandatory thing because you can't launch your product without doing a proper market research.
Mm-hmm.
Like you won't know if the person is actually going to buy it or not.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to just blindly launch it. And the sales, and you got to have a sales strategy to actually sell your product.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, I mean, all these kind of things, and you're actually doing all this on the same platform, one single platform, got me really excited. I mean, technology excites me and fascinates me, and the better it is for the user, the all the possible ways you can actually use it, and in the most easiest way. I would
Mm-hmm.
say that the most easiest way. Uh, this thing, made me fall in love with that. Like I
Mm-hmm.
thought it's gonna be like a because I've seen other CRMs like you must have heard of Pega and all that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, not the latest version because I've seen other companies using the past versions of Pega, and I feel the user interface is pretty complicated for the end user.
Mm-hmm.
It's more like you're actually doing the administrative tasks. You're more like
Yep.
a doing the. I mean, it's not like a regular user. You actually think the customer service representative would be actually aware of doing the configuration of like taking care of the workflow or doing whatever the complicated parts. I mean, his job was to just mostly interact with the customers and understand their issues and log them and do the whole process. I
So
don't think it would be like an extra burden for him to actually learn the administrative part or whatever the development part.
So,
So
so what are some of your feelings though about okay, so I mean I've used Salesforce and helped implement it for some clients, and I've definitely dealt with a lot of customers that have used Salesforce in the past,
Mhm.
and like you're talking about ease of use here, and realistically there are some like newer CRMs out there, base CRMs of the world, and HubSpot's trying to get in there, ProsperWorks, these CRMs they're trying to build a
Mhm.
to be a bit a little bit more simple, but very, very, very user friendly to the point where someone could
Mhm.
probably jump on and start using it probably a lot more easily than Salesforce. But these are not really built for the 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 user type thing.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
so,
This
what,
is
so
this is
what's
where the
your
limits
feeling
come
toward
out.
that?
Yeah, this is where the limits come, the governance limits and all those come into the picture. I mean, let's say like the ProsperWorks that you work on. I
Hmm.
mean, it's pretty good for like a small and a medium scale business, I
Yep.
guess. Because I don't think they would be able to actually handle a large scale business where like there are like 30,000 end users and millions
Oh
of
no, they're not
data.
trying to be, right. Yeah. Hmm.
Exactly, but I mean, they might have a plan to go up to till there, but I think Salesforce have actually figured it out already,
Hmm.
and that's why they're still in the market. I mean, like just being like it's more. I would say it's more like being the apex
Hmm.
predator of always. I think I mean, they came up with a much better. They actually foreseen the requirements of the huge businesses that are
Hmm.
going on out there, and they're actually keeping up the pace too. Like in the 2016, the Salesforce came with the Lightning.
Hmm.
Lightning is like a much better interface because the Salesforce Classic, which was the version before the 2016. Like I was like telling you about the Pega, right? The
Hmm.
Pega, which had a not really user friendly interface for end user.
Yep.
Salesforce had a similar interface too, but Salesforce upgraded. It was trying to keep up the pace with the current market, like how to make the things user friendly for the end user. So they came up with the Lightning, which is a fantastic user interface.
Hmm.
It's going to be very easier for any sort of an end user, not only for the user, it's for the developer part too. It makes your life a lot easier developing, and there are a lot of ways you can make it look much better. I mean, as a regular developer, I
Hmm.
mean, let's say you're not aware of Salesforce and you're just trying to develop a Salesforce now, develop something on the Salesforce, and when you look at it, I think you would be easily able to just do all the administrative tasks by yourself because they
Hmm.
made it that much easier. You can just easily get on that and you can just start developing or working on it immediately. So they made it a lot easier for not only for the end users but also for the developers and administrators that they actually have, like actually work on the application.
Hmm.
And a lot of other CRMs are also trying to keep up the pace with them. Like, I haven't really heard anything about the Microsoft CRM, but I heard they're trying to, like come up
Yep.
with a much better changes now. Though.
Yeah, I think there's a few things like as Microsoft moved into Office 365,
Mhm.
they're trying to build in a couple of different solutions more to the core of that service, and probably not necessarily trying to compete with like a Salesforce, just more of like I think there's something interesting going on right now with small businesses. So enterprise Salesforce, these massive companies, Even Box, for example, just a random company. They're older, but they have a lot of enterprise clients. Even BlackBerry back in the day, they have that enterprise
Mhm,
stronghold that it's that there's a
mhm,
lot of money in it, and the amount of small businesses you'd have to get to that's equivalent of one enterprise client, it's significant. So you see
mhm,
why Salesforce has definitely like figured out that area. They moved when they first started. I'm sure they were in the small, medium sized business, and they slowly moved upstream. Every company does, right? Like the serious money is enterprise. So they figured out enterprise. They own that space. They're a $60 billion market cap company right now. Like they're gigantic. And I started
mhm,
seeing recently that Salesforce is actually trying to get a little bit back into the small business solution because they started seeing that these companies were coming up and taking over that space. And it's this interesting thing where I swear they had, I forgot what the solution was called, but I think they just
mhm,
killed it off recently. And now I'm seeing something like a small
mhm.
business solution, essentials Salesforce. Like it almost seems like they're trying to get back into small business, but they're also like, do you know
Mhm.
what's going on with that? Like are they trying to get like,
Yeah, yeah. Actually, I heard something like that from one of my friends, like who been to the Salesforce World Tour that happened last week in New
mhm,
York. So he was telling me something about like similar to this one. He didn't tell me this for sure, but he was telling me it was like part of their like monologue where the Salesforce was actually looking into getting into all these smaller businesses to going into all the all kinds of sizes of
mhm,
businesses, rather than just sticking with the like these huge implementations. They want to go in for like a like a smaller class businesses too. But I think it would be really hard for them to actually take care of the maintenance. I mean, maybe Salesforce should come down with their cost, because I feel there's it's a little pricey.
mhm.
Salesforce is a little pricey for small scale businesses, because I don't think you would want to pay like $300 for an unlimited edition of Salesforce for an like a company with like a 40 employees
Oh
or
yeah.
50 employees.
Mhm.
Yeah. So
But
I
that's
mean,
where that's where
there's always choice though. There's always choice. Like you can actually pick something that suits you. Maybe not an unlimited edition, because you don't. You're if you're not going to use an unlimited edition, then you don't really need to get that. I mean, there are like other developer editions like that you can actually get on
mhm.
Salesforce and use it for the company.
But
But
so
maybe,
that's where it's tough though, right? Because like so Salesforce even going into the small business area, it doesn't totally make business sense because the sheer like as you mentioned, they need to kind of charge these prices per seat because they're also giving support. And I think a lot of these companies don't realize, or you could even see like the HubSpots of the world that offer it for free or like a very cheap per seat license. They don't give like any phone support. They don't give any customer support because you can't be a SaaS company, charge $30 per seat per month and give customer support. That's insane. Like you need like
exactly.
that's the most expensive part. So it's this weird thing where it's almost like I think Salesforce already owns the enterprise market. They like I wonder how much larger they can even grow. Like they already have most of it. I mean there are some larger who are their largest competitors right now? There's I think there's two, right?
I mean, for the Salesforce,
Yeah.
uh, I think Microsoft Dynamics CRM, but I haven't
Mhm.
really heard a lot of companies using it. But
Mhm.
I heard it's pretty good. But like Microsoft itself got like lots of units
Mhm.
uh, for themselves, where they can actually use the Microsoft Dynamics CRM. And keeping that aside, I think there's you probably have you heard of this SAP's Hybris now?
Yes. Yes. The
Yeah,
mhm.
I feel that it's gonna give it like a really good competition for Salesforce though.
Mhm.
I mean, I
Well,
heard it.
SAP has been around forever, right? Like they're one of those massive companies that's just they've been in the game for so long, and their market cap is fairly significant. I think they're a significantly larger company than Salesforce because
Exactly, they are, and but I mean, you do realize that SAP is much expensive than Salesforce, though, right?
well,
Uh,
yeah, they're not
they,
just CRM, quote unquote, right? Like not Salesforce isn't just CRM, but SAP never wanted to just be CRM.
exactly, they are into pretty much everything. Like, I mean, they've been in the ERP systems, and I mean, they got their own analytics cloud, and like SAP was already into all these fields way before Salesforce.
Hmm.
They're already there, and now I think they're trying to keep up the pace too. They came up with the SAP Hybris. and I think which is pretty cool. I think this is definitely gonna give a like a strong competition to Salesforce,
Mm-hmm.
because they got this omnichannel software, which is like a pretty good competitor for the Salesforce omnichannel, and they got like a pretty good marketing cloud, like just like Salesforce. But I think the price is where it makes a difference, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I feel that SAP Hybris would be a much expensive than Salesforce.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like a like a good survival plus point for Salesforce, because it is a way more expensive. I think I mean, it's not about the price, but I mean, you would get the same, I mean, a much better benefit. Maybe you would get a much better benefits than Salesforce
Mm-hmm.
if you're using SAP Hybris.
Well, yeah.
And I'm pretty sure, but this is definitely not for like a medium scale and the small scale business.
Oh yeah.
Something that Salesforce is actually looking into. Maybe SAP is trying to beat the large scale business implementation of the Salesforce,
Mm-hmm.
but I think the Salesforce is actually looking down and move towards the medium and the small scale businesses now. So I
Well,
think
so
it's
that's why I want what let's throw on that. Like, why do they want to do that? Because like, okay, so SAP, they're in the ERP space and these other areas that are all connected. Like as you mentioned, it's really just general business process. They want to be the solution for everything with that. So why would Salesforce back away from getting involved with that where there's still a lot of money, a lot more market cap? Like how much larger can Salesforce even get if they took over the small medium business market? I don't feel like there's that much more market cap they can add versus going after the big guns of SAP and Microsoft Dynamics. Like I feel like it's the only direction they can go to grab market share.
I don't think they're gonna like going head on towards the SAP Hybris and Microsoft Dynamics CRM. I think they're already pretty good. Salesforce is already pretty good in the market. I think they're trying to maintain their stand right now in the market.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're already in a pretty good position right now, and expanding at a much lower rate compared to any other like compared to the SAP Hybris, because a lot of companies are already using the SAP, so probably they might like opt for SAP Hybris because it's already in their systems.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Salesforce is not trying to like push the SAP away and get into their seats.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just trying to like keep up their position there strong,
Mm-hmm.
rather than just trying to give a strong competition to SAP Hybrid. I think they might be giving a good competition to Microsoft Dynamics CRM though.
Okay.
That thing is for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But I think maybe they're trying to like expand their way down. Like down to the small and the medium sizes, because the companies that you're looking at right now,
Mm-hmm.
let's say a small good startup that's gonna like with a capital of like 400 million right now is using ProsperWorks right now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So and suddenly the company goes up for like a 2 billion or 3 billion. It's not like they're just going to kick off these ProsperWorks and just move on to the Salesforce at the same instant. What if
Mm-hmm.
they're really comfortable with the ProsperWorks and the everyone is pretty much used to ProsperWorks and all
Mm-hmm.
that? I don't think they would just move away from ProsperWorks that easily, unless the ProsperWorks is not doing really well and not keeping up the pace with the market right now.
Mm-hmm.
If they're doing so much better, then they would actually expand their business and give the ProsperWorks a good scope of
Mm-hmm.
expanding and getting into the same level as Salesforce.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think that is what Salesforce don't want to happen. That's why they're trying to go
Okay.
down
So
their
so
level and take
so
over.
by allowing ProsperWorks, these base CRMs, these other CRMs to get some of that, small, medium, then mid market, getting to large market, that's giving that's their Achilles heel where that's where you get into the enterprise space by getting in with a medium sized company that's growing quickly and they
Mhm.
want to stick with what they like and they're used to using ProsperWorks. So
Mhm.
Salesforce is seeing that
Mhm.
it long term, maybe like this, we all know this is not going to happen over the course of 1-2 years, but 5-10 years, will
Mhm.
Salesforce still be at the top? Well, maybe not if they allow someone to come into the medium large size space and start taking over the enterprise. So that's a really interesting point. So I guess there's two ways to look at it. There's maintaining the position, and then
Mhm.
there is actually growth. And it sounds like Salesforce is almost in this sales or this cycle of their business where they may not be in growth mode
Mhm.
anymore. They're doing a lot of acquisitions. They just acquired a company recently, I think a few weeks ago or a couple months ago,
Mhm.
and So I guess what is the goal there? Because when you have you're a public company and you have investors and shareholders, it's about growth at that point. They don't care about them keeping the position that they're in, so they need to be growing in some regard. So I guess I'm just curious, like where they would be growing if they're looking to then just like I just want to maintain my position and keep what we have. Because like being a public company, you can't just have that as your mindset. You have shareholders that are like, no, that's not how this world works.
I So, talking about the Salesforce growth here, I think Salesforce is doing a good job acquiring the small companies, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say like I'm using Salesforce right now, and let's just imagine that Salesforce doesn't have the Heroku, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Because they currently have Heroku, which would let you like program in multiple
Yep.
cross-platform languages and all that. So let's say if it doesn't, I mean, if that's the case, then I would actually move out from Salesforce, right?
Mm.
So, and Salesforce don't really want that to happen, because right now, if you see any kind of like e-commerce solutions out there, I mean, most of them, the better ones, you can actually integrate any of them with Salesforce.
Mm-hmm.
Like the
Oh
box you
yeah.
said, you can actually integrate with the Salesforce, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think the Salesforce is doing pretty good job at this part, and making their stance here, like maintaining their position here. In this way, they wouldn't actually lose not even a single customer out of their hands,
Mm-hmm.
because if you're looking at a different sort of an e-commerce solutions, Salesforce already got them. Even if you buy
Mm-hmm.
that, you can actually integrate into the Salesforce. You
Mm-hmm.
don't have to move out of Salesforce and get something that you can actually integrate it with, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I feel, I mean, even the Microsoft Azure, or there are like Outlook, you can actually integrate the Outlook too, which actually belongs to Microsoft. It
Mm.
doesn't stop Salesforce from letting you integrate it into the Salesforce, right? Like for
Yeah,
the
and Google's not gonna want to stop that either. Like Google is backing ProsperWorks as their CRM of choice, but inside of Google, we all know that they're using Salesforce. They're using ProsperWorks in some divisions, but like Salesforce is one of the only solutions that a company as large as Google can use. So they're never going to be like Salesforce. We're not going to let you integrate with G Suite. Like no, we want to and we want to be able to let our G Suite customers integrate with Salesforce because it's a win-win. Like you can't take a massive company like Salesforce and say, screw you, we don't want to deal with you. Same thing with Microsoft. Yes, they have a competing platform in a way, but it's like at the end of the day, if all of your enterprise customers are using Salesforce, you're not going to be like, no, you only get the integration if you're using Dynamics, because that's a way that you piss off your clients, you know?
Exactly. That's what like this is where the like the Salesforce does its job really well.
Mm-hmm.
It tries to keep their customers happy,
Mm-hmm.
but providing them all sorts of solutions that they actually want to. Like I told you before, like you can actually integrate with any sort of an e-commerce solution. It's not like, oh, I can't do this on Salesforce. They actually gave you the options of you can actually go with the standard one or go with the third party external solution and integrate it into your Salesforce
Mm-hmm.
platform that you're using. So that's where it won't easily let their customers go away. And for every release, they're coming up with something new and better.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're talking about the automation process. Now the Salesforce came up with the Salesforce DX.
Mm-hmm.
I feel DX is pretty awesome. Like when you're integrating it for the continuous integration and the continuous development, it's pretty good. The Salesforce DX is pretty good,
Mm-hmm.
and I think like a lot of customers who are actually starting to use the automation right now won't even look at the DevOps if they're started using the Salesforce DX. So
Okay. So what is Salesforce DX? What is the premise behind it?
I mean, Salesforce, it helps you for the continuous integration. Just
Okay.
like how, I mean, currently, a lot of organizations out there, they're using the GitHub right now for, like Git branching for
Yep.
the CI,
Mm-hmm.
for the continuous integration right
Yep.
now for the DX, but you can actually do it with the standard Salesforce tool, which is DX is owned by Salesforce itself.
Ah, okay.
So it's not actually letting their customers actually go out there and look for like I mean, you don't have to go with the struggle of, like doing the like making up a grid branching strategy and, integrating DevOps into that, make up your own release planning and all that with
Mm-hmm.
the DX, which is actually off the Salesforce. But I mean, it would actually cost you a different price for using that, but it's probably the same amount that you're going to be spending on the development of a Git, for Git and the DevOps.
Mm-hmm.
So they're actually not letting their customers out of their side and go out looking for something else. What if the customer actually finds a much better way of doing it in some other CRM,
Mm-hmm.
which actually provides all that in much cheaper way? So
Mm-hmm.
they are actually providing all this in the Salesforce itself. Like the DX is a much better one. Like I feel it's pretty good. for the
Okay.
customers who are already using the Salesforce.
So Salesforce has gotten so large, and there's so many things that you can do within it. And so to better understand, so you're not working for Salesforce. You're working for a company
That
that
uses
it that
Salesforce.
consults for Salesforce, right?
Yeah.
So like,
Yes.
so do you know if Salesforce even internally offers these services, or do they partner with the companies like the Blue Wolves of the world, these Salesforce consulting companies, like essentially companies like mine and yours? Like, is that something that they heavily rely on, or do they actually have teams internally that do Salesforce consulting?
That's pretty interesting question though. Like, let's say you're a new company, okay? You've
Hmm.
been using some other CRM till now, and you wanna move on to Salesforce, migrate to Salesforce, okay?
Hmm.
So in such cases, Salesforce actually gives you a full on support to migrate your application into the Salesforce.
Oh, really?
But later on, when you're expanding, and Salesforce, but for the price you're paying, Salesforce always gives you the support though.
Okay.
They always have one of their people online with you, helping you in the architecture part and all that, in the designing the whole application.
Okay.
But when it comes to the expanding it and developing the way you want, I mean, Salesforce does help you with that too, but it's going to be a much expensive way. It's going to be really
Mm,
expensive to actually let Salesforce do the whole work in your organization, because
okay.
the CRM itself is expensive, and taking the developers are, I mean, making the Salesforce itself to develop your application would be a lot expensive. So that's why what companies usually do is like they just buy the type of edition they want, and they hire the Salesforce developer externally to develop that. And at the same point, they would still have the same support from the Salesforce, just
So,
in case they come across something like during the
mhm.
architecture part, or during the limits, during the Salesforce limits, if it's actually possible in Salesforce or not.
So why doesn't Salesforce, the company, start acquiring some of these consulting companies like yours, to start doing it internally? Because I think you and I both know that someone will be willing to pay a slight premium, maybe even like a 20% premium, hiring
Mhm.
Salesforce directly versus, oh, we're a Salesforce partner and we'll help you integrate.
Mhm. But that would open up a whole new branch in Salesforce itself,
Hmm.
right?
So it's
It's
a
gonna.
service-based business
I
now
mean,
instead of
I
a
think.
product.
Yeah. I mean, they're capable enough to do that, though.
Hmm.
I would say that, but it's gonna be the whole. Maybe they might do it in the future. We never know. But they actually do. I mean, they still are doing that. Like, they actually provide the developers. If you're just like I said, if you're just migrating to Salesforce, they actually provide the developers for you to
Hmm.
develop. Like to migrate your
Yep.
application,
They just
and
don't want to be maintaining it over time, like the custom,
exactly, for the long term, because
yeah.
it's going to be really expensive.
Hmm.
Maybe if they're going to make their price go down, maybe actually people would actually go for that.
Hmm.
And for the, I mean, what actually, what happens when Salesforce does that? It loses its its market value though, because when Salesforce itself is doing all this, the customers won't have any other way to get a Salesforce developer to expand their application the way they want, because
Mm.
the only way they can look at is Salesforce. So it's not gonna be flexible for a customer. Let's say the customer is in like a east, like I'm in the Middle East, or like in Japan or somewhere there.
Mhm.
Obviously, Salesforce is gonna have someone there. They're gonna have their one of their offices where they can provide support in Japan too. But I don't think the Salesforce would actually want to take care of the whole development part and keep it to themselves, because it's actually constraining the like when like putting some sort of a boundaries to the customer, that doesn't matter what you want to do, you always have to look towards me for any sort of help. So it's
Mhm.
it's more like the customer's hands are tied on, and the only person that can help in this world is Salesforce itself.
Mhm. So,
So I don't think Salesforce want to actually do that.
mhm. I wonder how large of a market it is, though. So, Salesforce, we obviously have a good idea of how large the CRM market is. You look at the SAPs of the world and take a small portion of that, plus, the market cap of Salesforce and potential, you get a rough idea. But I wonder how large the service industry of Salesforce integration, and you're kind of more broadly going to business process integration.
Mhm.
Like, I wonder how large of a market that is. I mean, is it larger than Salesforce itself, or is it just a fraction of Salesforce? Because
I
like,
wouldn't say Salesforce is the biggest part of the whole CRM, because CRM itself is like a huge market.
mhm,
I mean, doesn't matter what sort of an organization you have, you're definitely gonna be using a little CRM. It maybe they don't really need to be a cloud applications. All the CRMs don't really need to be a cloud of applications. Maybe I might have an organization that only runs in my city.
Mm.
So I don't really need to get on the cloud or anything. I don't really need to use the Salesforce, pay them so much. Maybe I can just make a couple of developers develop a Java application for me, and have a CTI integration happen into that.
But
And
you don't think that that would be kind of taking a step backward? I mean, like at this point, the cost of being in the cloud and how cheap Google Cloud is, and you know AWS and Azure, like
I mean, I'm just giving you an example that the CRM is not just restrained to Salesforce or all these big companies and the small companies that
okay,
you're seeing. I'm just talking about like let's say like maybe not all the places are are within reach of using these kind of solutions. Maybe let's say in some places where the currency value is totally different, those companies won't even be able to afford Salesforce kind of applications.
okay,
So Salesforce kind of services. So companies like that, maybe they might actually come up with their own like a small sort of an application, maybe make their developers develop this kind of small application. And because all they have to deal with is the like a 500 to 600 customers that are present in their own city. They don't really go out of the box to actually take, unless they're really expanding. Maybe they might have a totally different solution than back then when they're expanding though. But I'm just giving you a picture of the how CRM, how the CRM is out there in the world. Maybe I'm just giving you like a smallest fraction, like these could be a part of CRM too. Like the smallest Java application out there, and to the Salesforce or the SAP
okay.
Hybris, they all come in. Maybe they just make like a 0.5% of the whole CRM market, but those are CRMs too. End of the day.
No, it's definitely interesting, and I gotta say, I wonder a lot. Like right now, the kind of relationship that I have with ProsperWorks, and they're looking for people like me to be partners and consultants, because that's honestly one of the things that allows a software company to scale. They're getting venture backing, they're investing into the platform. They don't want to do the custom integrations, no different than Salesforce. And I wonder, like long term, what the goal is. Like, is it just going to be another kind of cycle where our company could eventually be like one of the blue wolves for Salesforce, or a company like yours is to Salesforce? And is that just going to be part of the world? Like any product service is going to have that kind of service-based business on the side of it, and they're never really going to want to be involved in it. Or or do they look to eventually acquire? Like, what is it? Just the same thing, new software, different?
Exactly. So this is where, just like what we spoke about, like Salesforce, like you asked me, like why are Salesforce is not providing developers by itself? It can actually, like send in their own developers and do the development for the Salesforce platform, and so that the company doesn't really need to hire someone else from externally for the Salesforce development. See, and you can actually ask, you can put in the same question for the ProsperWorks itself. So what these actually, like I say that's a really good foresight for a company like ProsperWorks, because they want their customers to be flexible. Doesn't matter where the customer is. They want the customer to be flexible and able to hire someone who can actually help them in their application. They don't want them to like just tie their customers to themselves, that you are gonna use ProsperWorks only, and you're gonna have to only look at us. Just in case, let's say the ProsperWorks was not there let's say they don't have any developers right now to send in. Maybe there's like a queue system where they gotta wait. Then and the application is down. That would be like a worst thing to happen. Then the customer might actually move out of ProsperWorks from the whole ProsperWorks, and the ProsperWorks don't want that to happen. So that's why they want their customer to be there, and they want their customers to actually be able to figure out the solutions for the issues.
And what's so interesting too with it, like if you pay close attention, part of the agreement I have with them in exchange for some margin, if we actually sell it, is we're giving tier one support. So what's so intriguing with these software companies is they want other people to take care of the tier one support. Tier one support is the basic, very, very, very basic questions, or like resetting passwords, just basic things like that. And of course, like ProsperWorks, the company, they don't want to deal with that at all. Like that level of support takes up so much time, and it's just so unnecessary. And that's where you start scaling teams to other,
because ProsperWorks want to do the core work. They want to be expanding the ProsperWorks itself. They don't want to deal with the customer issues. That's why I mean, even in the Salesforce, you don't really call Salesforce for password resetting and other stuff, because you're actually developing the application in your own company, the industry that the organization that actually using Salesforce. So that's why you have the administrators who actually deals with all these. So whenever you're running a Salesforce application in your organization, you would definitely have an administrator, a developer all the time there. So I mean, unless there's like a really like a large scale issue, then there is always Salesforce to support them for only
Mm-hmm.
the complex issues, though,
Mm-hmm.
because Salesforce want to deal with expanding their application in the from the back end from the core size,
Mm-hmm.
not on the external way, because the external way is much easier. There are lots of other people who can actually deal with that in a much cheaper way, and that companies also don't want to always like look at Salesforce whenever they got like these kind of silly issues, because even if they look at Salesforce is not gonna say no to these kind of issues, but of course it comes at a price. They're gonna charge you so much,
Mm-hmm.
so neither the organizations, not neither the Salesforce want to do that.
Mm-hmm. No, it's really an interesting thing, and I guess at the end of the day, you take a step back and you really piece together a product company versus a service company, and product company is definitely the way to go, and you're seeing this reinvigoration of SaaS, essentially software as a service, and it's like, well, where does the service come into play? Because well, they're creating software and they're trying to make it so user friendly that they don't even need partners. But the thing is that now makes them kind of a service business. So SaaS really is software, but you're still giving some level of service. And it sounds like that these SaaS companies are looking to outsource some of this service tier to their partners so they can be more like a product company. And it's just an interesting thing to see because I think like Salesforce, yes, a lot of the time you have the internal IT departments of a large enterprise company managing that install. You have full-time employees managing Salesforce. But then when you have a smaller company trying to implement a CRM, then you don't really have that. Oftentimes you don't have anyone that's even helping them with it, but they're trying to sell like, no, you should implement, HubSpot because it's so user friendly and easy to use. You don't need anyone, but then they don't configure it properly and they don't support you to set it up properly because they don't really necessarily even care. It's just a very weird thing. I guess the small, medium-sized business, but it's really the only way to get in because they don't want to spend the money it would take to do it properly. Like if you're implementing a new CRM, are you going to want to spend 10, 20, 30 grand to implement it if you're a small business? Like you can't even afford that. So it's just an interesting thing to see, I guess, the growth of SaaS and how that's affecting things. And then we kind of go back to just being a software business. And how was Salesforce? Salesforce wasn't always a SaaS company, right? Like you must have bought a license back in the day before they switched over to the monthly recurring model, right?
Exactly. They weren't always that, but now they're like a top in like I think they're like a top one in the whole SaaS business right now.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
they weren't always that in the past.
Okay. So for you, what are you planning on doing, I guess, long term? It sounds like that you're going to be sticking with Salesforce, which also probably means you're going to be in that enterprise space. Do you enjoy solving the enterprise problems, large enterprise business problems, or do you like maybe the idea of going to a smaller type of company and see if you can help them because you can? Like, what are you thinking long
I mean,
term?
I feel this would keep me happier in the safe zone right now. But if I want to like a potential growth in future into my career,
Mm-hmm.
I feel that going for something that's growing right now would be a much better way. Like let's say like a ProsperWorks, which is going
Mm,
on. If I had a really good opportunity, I wouldn't really mind going for ProsperWorks, but I would do my part of research if
interesting.
to see how the ProsperWorks is keeping up the pace in the market. Like I would just do my research if they're gonna actually survive in the market in the long term scope
Mm-hmm.
or not.
So that's
I
it.
would.
So you can actually get a name for yourself. Like ProsperWorks would give a shit about you essentially, whereas Salesforce, we have more than enough of you, that we won't really care about you. Is that kind of the mindset where you can actually be seen and there's growth and
Exactly.
okay.
That's true. That's how it is right now. Like, I mean, Salesforce is gonna be Salesforce. I mean, maybe unless in maybe like a 10, 20 years into the future, they
Mhm.
might have a really good, strong competition, like a much cheaper CRM out there, giving a
Mhm.
pretty good competition to Salesforce. Because at the end of the day, these are all like multiple tools. These are all tools. I mean, they could get obsolete. Let's say there's like a
Yeah.
huge bug coming up, and automatically one bad issue and all the people would back off immediately. So
Mhm.
any this kind of sort of thing would happen. I mean, God forbid nothing like that happen, but
Mhm.
in the future anything could happen. You can never really know. Maybe they might become the like biggest CRM ever in the world too, either
Mhm.
way. But for my personal growth in my professional, I mean like in my professional career way, I mean I would actually go for something that's growing right now, because I know, because I might have my own personal professional growth too. I might actually look at myself in a much better position if the
Mm-hmm.
company is growing along with me, because I've been there and been there with the company during its growth.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, if it's a Salesforce, I'm going to be a developer. Maybe if I'm doing the certifications with my experience, I might be like an architect or whoever in the
Mm-hmm.
future.
Yep.
But I don't think I would get into the same position as that I would get in like a smaller company that's going to be growing into something bigger in future,
Mm-hmm.
because I know a lot of people who been there for smaller startups. Let's say Snapchat. I
Mm-hmm.
know people when Snapchat started, there are like a 30 people working on it, and I know the people. Those 30 people are like a really good position right now,
Mm-hmm.
because they've always been. It's just like they didn't just bail out on say Snapchat and moved into Facebook, which is
Mm-hmm.
which is bigger than Snapchat in the past.
Mm-hmm.
But still
They took
now,
the risk, right? There's
yeah,
you maybe make less money up front because you're getting involved with more of a startup or a smaller company, but being an
mhm,
early adopter and being early there, you could stand
mhm,
out and you could maybe make a fortune from that, or really find a good place from that.
I mean, it's not. I mean, making good money and making good fortune is a good part too. But ultimately, you'll have a position there, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm someone who would actually go for the reputation
Mm-hmm.
rather than the the
The
paycheck.
money, yeah, for sure. You have to
Yeah,
be driven.
yeah, exactly. So I feel that it's. I mean. It's a really good thing if you're sticking with something that's growing really good well into the future,
Mm-hmm.
and if you're just being loyal and faithful to that company and its growth.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would get you into a really good position in the future if the company ever grows into a really huge
Mm-hmm.
like a SaaS into the future.
So my the way that I think about a lot of this, because I'm partnered with multiple companies,
Mhm,
ProsperWorks, G Suite, Google for the G Suite side of things, Help
mhm,
Scout, and a bunch of other they're smaller companies. But
mhm,
my mindset is every company that I partner with and I try to sell to these small medium businesses, I
mhm,
would 100% be okay with working for them. And
mhm,
that is my decision of choosing them as kind of one of my partners. So it's like, if all everything just fell apart for me, I would be
mhm,
more than happy working for
mhm,
ProsperWorks, working for Help Scout, working for Google, working for any of these companies that I recommend, Panadoc, and I feel
mhm,
like that's the mindset that I kind of have, and that it's like at the end of the day, I kind of get to work for them. It's this weird thing where I in a way I am working for them. It's just
mhm.
externally, and so I get to kind of work for all of my favorite companies at once. So it's kind of a fun thing along the way.
Yeah, I mean, like you're more like a one guy blue wolf, right? I mean,
Mhm.
that's how I would put it, because you're just kind of you're a consulting person for the ProsperWorks, and you got multiple clients under you,
Mhm.
wor- working for them and helping them. I mean, maybe if the ProsperWorks really grows into a much bigger company, and you might one day probably need to hire a lot of people to do the consulting stuff, because you won't be able to take care of it all by yourself.
Mhm.
So maybe you might actually have a scope of turning into one like a blue wolf kind of consulting firm by
Mhm.
yourself, and
Yeah, and
which is pretty good.
yeah,
Yep.
and it's definitely tough to scale that. I'm right now. I'm going through that. I'm hiring a couple people and trying to figure out how to scale the
Mhm,
consulting side, and it is really difficult because
mhm,
just working with as how closely you've worked with Salesforce, wherever there are difficulties or limitations, or all these weird things about the API that the average person probably does not know unless they dealt with it as much as you have. So how do
mhm,
you go in and teach someone else that either for me to hire someone, I either need to probably pay someone 100 grand a year,
mhm.
or I need to, train someone from the ground up, and that would be a massive investment, time
I know
wise.
that's a pretty expensive investment, because I've seen people actually working for the clients that are actually using Salesforce right now.
Mm,
You know how I mean, sales. There's something called Salesforce University where you can actually learn stuff, okay, on Salesforce, and
okay.
also Salesforce provides you lots of trial heads where you can just learn from the scratch, learn the whole Salesforce from the scratch. But you got to be put in invest a lot of time into
Mm,
that. But to make it more, to get to the complex part and to solve the complex, the situations, you definitely need to do like some sort of certifications and practice. And for that, you also got the Salesforce University, which is pretty expensive. I mean, like, I
mm,
mean, like a large scale industries, they actually send their own full-time employees for that training.
That's what
Because I,
I was going to ask you that. So the company that you do work for, that you're doing work for, like, do they have any internal employees that they're training just to be managing this? Because would it be cheaper at a certain point if you're that large
oh
of a
yes,
company?
they do that too. A lot of companies. I've been seeing it a lot right now because I've seen this company send like five of their employees because they
Mm.
moved on to the Salesforce, migrated into Salesforce. So they want their employees to know about Salesforce. So they send out their employees, and they literally pay like $10,000 a week
Oh, wow.
to get them learn the lessons for the five people, for the
Mm.
five guys, and they still have to work a lot to actually get better at what they actually learn. And I also seen these companies where they actually get one person, one good person who actually knows really well about the Salesforce, and make that guy teach a bunch of other guys the whole Salesforce thing,
Mm.
which is a lot, like cost effective.
Yeah.
But
Oh, for
I
sure.
feel that because and they always pick the people who can actually get easily adapted and easily fast learners. Because I mean, in the Lightning, most of the stuff that you work on is like JavaScript. Okay, so
Mm.
in the light because in the Salesforce Lightning, pretty much a lot of companies are migrating to Salesforce Lightning now,
Okay.
and in the Lightning bundle, I mean, we use the Aura framework for the UI, and all for the backend functionality. It's all JavaScript. So I think that my company would actually pick some guy who's actually really good in JavaScript and start teaching
Ah,
him the Salesforce.
interesting.
He would easily pick up the pace, right? He would
Mm.
easily get the whole thing and you know get under get a much better understanding about how the Salesforce works,
Hmm.
especially if the application is running in the Lightning interface.
Okay,
So
so a programmer probably already has that problem-solving mindset, and you
mhm,
kind of need to have that to be a programmer. So at that
exactly.
point, it's just a matter of teaching them what is CRM and what is business process. That's
Exactly.
probably easier than the reverse order.
Yeah, you just need the right person to pick up the pace. That's
Hmm.
it. And like you said, I'm not really sure how the ProsperWorks work.
Hmm.
I mean, I don't know if they provide any sort of a lessons and like any, like a
They're
teaching.
starting to try to develop some things. It's very early stages at the moment, but I think it's funny where if you look at what they're doing, there's probably a very set process that you go through. They're trying
Oh,
they were a very small market, and now they're moving to
mhm,
they say that their target customer base is a company less than 2,000 employees, of which maybe 3 or 400 are actually
mhm,
using the
mhm.
CRM.
I
So,
was I was actually curious about this part. So when you develop something on ProsperWorks,
mhm.
so do you use like a specific programming language? Is it like a configuration or customization? What
So
exactly
So
is
there's a little bit of configuration that goes on within the
it?
CRM, but for the most part, so develop multiple pipelines and you modify the stages or custom fields, and you get creative where it's like, okay, so I want it to be that when I move this opportunity to this stage, if
Mhm,
this custom field equals this or is checkboxed or selected, I want it to trigger, the creation of a QuickBooks invoice and all these other things to happen. So sometimes
mhm,
you do modify ProsperWorks by utilizing custom fields and things like that and stages and things of
mhm,
that nature, but it's normally external. So you're going to have your own kind of platform where you're going to be making these API calls. So
mhm,
there's an internal, very basic, change a stage, and that will
mhm,
trigger the creation of like a task that's built
mhm.
internal, but it's very limited to the point where I don't use that whatsoever. It's just incredibly limited.
Is this like the most complex part of the development in the ProsperWorks?
So the most complex part is so a lot of companies that are using ProsperWorks. This is what something I wanted to ask you because a lot of my clients are using many pieces of SaaS. So they're using
Mhm,
PandaDoc for document management. They're using Harvest and QuickBooks Online for invoicing.
mhm,
They're using this whole list of SaaS services, Asana for project management. So then it
mhm,
comes down to I want my CRM to integrate with my project management tool, my finance
mhm,
tool, and all these things like that. So really, it
mhm.
becomes an integration thing at that point. There's some business process, but for you could do a lot of that inside of
Salesforce.
Salesforce, right?
Yep, that's true. That's totally true.
So
I
it's a
agree with
different kind of difficulty. It's really an API difficulty. My biggest problems are when
you.
Asana's API is limited in some way, and I get frustrated by it.
Exactly, that's totally true. Like I totally feel you what exactly you told me right
Mm-hmm.
now, because I'm not really sure about the limitations of the ProsperWorks or whatever the third party like tools that they are using that you have to integrate into the ProsperWorks.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I don't know about those limitations, but Salesforce do have limitations. But within the limitations, it performs really well, though.
Mm-hmm.
It performs really,
You could figure
really.
out workarounds, right? Like I think any problem you could figure out a workaround. The question then comes down to, can the end user that maybe employee one of 3,000, will they understand the process to take? The smaller the company, you can put these procedures in place that when this happens, you need to do this, this, and this, and you could train them. But
Mhm,
that's where it gets that user experience thing. So that's where I think Salesforce installs sometimes get massive and confusing because there's so
mhm,
many edge cases and workarounds, and it's
mhm,
not very well documented or trainable. And I think that's the difficulty. But you're always going to be facing that regardless. Running 7 different SaaS solutions for
mhm,
each tool, like that's overwhelming in and of itself as well. When should I be using Asana? When should I be using ProsperWorks? When should I be using this
mhm.
tool, that tool? And that's another problem of its own.
Yep, yep. I totally understand that. Yeah, that's true though. But I was just wondering, like, the ProsperWorks. Is there any way you can store data on ProsperWorks, or usually I mean, how is it usually? Does the client usually have their data stored on a third-party server and get it called into the ProsperWorks, or do they actually? Is there a way you can actually store data in ProsperWorks itself?
So it depends what data you're referring to. That's where you could pull in, custom fields here and there to store certain data. So, for example, what I'll do to maybe connect an opportunity in ProsperWorks with an email marketing campaign, I may store the twofold. I may store the email marketing campaign ID within
Mm-hmm.
that ProsperWorks opportunity. So now you kind of have this database connection at that point. You have a customs field that's just storing this ID and vice versa. So now they're kind of connected and they're linked. Sometimes you do that. Other times I'll use something like Airtable, which is another SaaS service where you can do a lookup. So, we're doing an API call and first we need to do a lookup to the database, which is kind of like a middle ground database, Airtable, just to maybe find a reference of something or give some type of output like, hey, these custom fields criteria meet here, here, and here, which means it needs to go into this marketing campaign, which has this ID, and now we push this ID to the other piece of software.
So
So
like triggers. Yep.
yeah, so most things I try to store on ProsperWorks when possible, but
Mhm,
some things you can, and that's where I'll use. So, for example, something that I do is
mhm.
I have an Airtable for my own company, and I have
Okay.
every single one of my clients listed in there. So it has their email domain, and it has their company name, and then a few
Mhm,
different custom fields. So their Asana project ID. The reply campaign ID, all these different IDs in other software. So for
mhm,
me, when I want to manipulate data from ProsperWorks,
mhm,
I can do an API call to Airtable to
mhm,
find the client based on maybe email domain. That's something that's not going to be changing. So let's do a check. Someone sends in a support ticket. I'll strip everything after the @ symbol. Now I have their domain, and now I could do a lookup in Asana or an Airtable for this company, and now I could find all the other data that I need. Do I need their Asana project ID, or do I need their Harvest ID or their QuickBooks Online ID? So I have now this central storage space of
uh-huh.
my customer data in kind of a middle ground solution. I could throw all of that in ProsperWorks and have a ton of custom fields storing that data, but that doesn't necessarily make as much sense in that scenario. So that's where it's a little bit difficult. Sometimes ProsperWorks, other times something like Airtable, I've relied on pretty heavily.
So, so do you think the ProsperWorks is actually doing something for this, like about this? Like, are they coming up with any better solutions, like in their next release or any updates? Like, how often do they actually come up with like new patches and new releases?
So they do a bi-weekly release schedule. So every 2 weeks they'll do kind of a major-ish release. They've been pretty
Uh-huh.
good about it. Right now, what's interesting is the difficulties they've been dealing with is they have people, companies, opportunities, leads, and projects, and tasks and things like that. The very separate silos, and you can have a company as the parent. Inside of company, you can have many people, and inside of people, you can have a bunch of opportunities, and companies can have opportunities as well. So the question is though, like, what if you have two opportunities and you want them related to one another. Or maybe you have, Betsy, who's a person, and Tim, who's another person. Betsy referred Tim. How do we now tie Betsy and Tim together as a related kind of entity? So now they're working on this link field, because this was a limitation that I'm sure, I'm actually super curious, like, what has Salesforce done to do this? Because right now, like, I can't have an opportunity that and really mark down well who referred this opportunity to us. But this is something that they're working on right now. Some very core things. But I think like once you have this database built and you have these silos, you have people siloed, you have companies siloed, and they can reference each other, they need to add another connection point of being able to just jump into a person and connect that person now to an opportunity or three opportunities or an opportunity to an opportunity or whatever you want to do. They're working on that massive problem right now, and they have a lot of Salesforce engineers actually that they've hired coming in and like, here's what we did at Salesforce, and here's how we should structure the databases, and here's how we should be fixing this.
Yeah, it's something. It's because it's something that deals with the metadata, the
Mm-hmm.
Salesforce backend data, about the whole. It's not about something you do develop on the Salesforce. It's actually something that happens behind the Salesforce, which is
Oh,
actually the data thing. So it depends upon how they design the architecture about how the data is being stored behind the Salesforce.
mm-hmm.
And like usually Salesforce provides you the standard. Like objects, we call them the objects, like a cases or accounts, or all these are like the standard objects, and you can actually run all these opportunities and leads through these standard objects itself. And it's
Okay.
I'm pretty sure like it's the way the it's the architecture, the Salesforce
Mm-hmm.
architecture itself. That's how they designed it. And like because pretty much all of this is actually stored in the Salesforce itself. All these leads and opportunities, like
Yep.
unless you have like a really a large scale organizations where they want their whole data to be much in a much secure space, unless they want that to happen. Besides that, if they don't want that, it's a lot easier using using the configuration, where we call it, this is all configuration. This can all be done if you're decided to use the standard Salesforce features. This could all be done in a configuration itself. Don't really
Okay.
have to go for any sort of like a custom development or stuff, unless, like I told you, if you don't want your data to be on Salesforce, if you want it to be somewhere much secure, if you
Mm-hmm.
feel the data is sensitive.
Yeah, I think that's the crazy thing that I've seen, that like there's companies like Intel, or they have an RMA system to return I have a monitor and it has a scratch on the screen and I want to return it and get a replacement, and like they will use Salesforce for their entire RMA process and system, which is, it's really like that's not really a CRM at that point. That's like an actual business process tracking through it. And that's what's super interesting, that I think, Salesforce is very good at doing a lot of things, whereas ProsperWorks, they're really trying to focus on being the best CRM, really, really the CRM spot. They're not trying to, at the moment, be that, you can use us as your RMA process. I'm sure I could figure out a way to do it if a client really wanted to do
I mean,
that.
this part, the RMA part, it, just in case if you want to know the status
Yeah.
of the thing, ultimately you're gonna have to call some customer service representative, right? You're gonna
Mm-hmm.
call the call center, like a helpline, and
Yep.
know about the status. So this process, what the reason why they would actually keep it on Salesforce is, the customer service representative would have a much better idea of what's the process and status. He would, because using the Salesforce would actually make his life easier to get pull out all the information that requires that you want to hear from him. So
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of companies are actually opting for Salesforce, like for the cases like these, because like pretty much everything can be rerouted
Mm-hmm.
inside the Salesforce. If you're using the Salesforce in the whole organization, or any sort of a different information can be rerouted uh, to the required personnel,
Mm-hmm.
whoever needs it. So that's where Salesforce does its
Yeah,
job much better.
absolutely, and it's interesting, and I don't totally know the direction that ProsperWorks is trying to go in regard to, do we want to have this separate area where you can kind of store data and be this like additional kind of database, in addition to just the basic, people, company records, these different entities that we're storing. I do know though that they just hired an employee from Salesforce. He was working at Salesforce for 10 years. He was a little
Uh,
bit fed up that like all they were doing at that point is selling 400 seat deals, and they stopped. They were no longer working on really these interesting problems that these smaller companies were facing. Instead, they were just like building a very strange, unique feature for like a very, very, very edge case type of enterprise client. And he was just so bored with it. So what he's actually coming in and doing is he's overhauling the API, which is great because the API has three. There's three APIs. There's an internal API, there's a development API that I can utilize, and then they have a Zapier API. Three totally separate APIs. And the ridiculous part is I have actually tried using Zapier and gotten these error message. And then when I jump into Postman for using the developer API and test it, there's no error message. And I'm like, what is going on? Like the API is broken, but why is it not broken when I actually use it through Postman? And then I found out that they use multiple APIs. So one of the massive projects that they're doing right now, within the next 2 quarters, they're going to be using one API for internal Zapier and for development. So that's kind of massive overhaul. So now they're going to be eating their own dog food, right? They're going to be using the same API that their developers are, like people like me, which is important, and that gives me a lot more flexibility as well. So that's one. And then two, they're trying to build out a system internal where you can build apps on top of ProsperWorks. And I know that for certain is something that they're thinking about and trying to work on. So at that point, I would agree with you. I think they would be building in a way to store data, because if I could build a web app on top of ProsperWorks, the data needs to be stored somewhere. It's probably going to be stored on their servers and their platform, and that's
Exactly.
where they can be more,
Salesforce got something similar to this. Like they got this place called App Exchange, so where you
okay.
can actually try to look for the applications. Rather than if you don't want to actually develop the application by yourself on their platform, you can actually go inside the App Exchange and look for the free apps, or some apps got pricing and some apps are just there for free. Like any
Mm-hmm.
developer can just make them and put it on there, and you can actually get it from the App Exchange. I think ProsperWorks is trying to do something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like keep some applications right there ready. Like let's say there's a table which you want to filter,
Mm-hmm.
and rather than developing the whole filter criteria based functionality, you can actually grab that application from there
Mm-hmm.
and like integrate into the table that you built.
And, and
So
and as a partner, someone like me, like that's interesting, because why shouldn't I be able to build out a process that I've built for maybe a customer and turn it into like a web app, and I could turn it into kind of like this modular piece. Now I could kind of sell it, right? And versus like having this like back end that I'm just maintaining with a bunch of API requests and calls and things like that, which I can duplicate. Like, why not have that as just this piece, this entity, this app on top of ProsperWorks, and maintain and sell that? It allows me to really maybe focus on a market and build SaaS, like build a SaaS product on top of and using their
exactly.
platform, and it's very
I mean,
sticky.
yep. Salesforce lets you do that.
Hmm.
Salesforce lets you do that.
Which is
I don't
super
know.
interesting.
Yeah, because I don't know like what's in the ProsperWorks mind, if they actually wanna open up like a like a market where they can actually let people develop the
Hmm.
applications and put it on there, and or sell their own applications for the people already been using the ProsperWorks.
Hmm.
I don't. I mean, maybe it might be a little struggle for ProsperWorks to open up such kind of new field inside their CRM
What do you think
where.
that the trade-offs would be for that? Like that I don't know if they would open it up like that, but at the very least, they would allow a custom person like you or me to go in and maybe integrate ProsperWorks deeply with an old system, because you could build on top of it. Like, I know they're trying to do that. I don't know if they're trying to turn a community into that. What do you think the trade-offs are building that community? What you said that they would struggle. What do you think they would struggle with?
I mean, the first would be the infrastructure part, I guess. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know the architecture of the ProsperWorks, how it's been designed in the
Mm-hmm.
backend. So maybe they might have to, like, come up with a new huge release where they would actually, open up this special spot for, this. For this app market where
Mm-hmm.
people can actually develop their own apps, and they also have to make sure to like provide all the required tools for development of this new application, this SaaS
Mm-hmm.
application, whatever we are going to develop, and put it on their platform.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
it's something. It's like a lot of like back end development work for the ProsperWorks.
Mm-hmm.
So they might like they might be need to look in. I mean, they might actually have to do a lot of groundwork
Mm-hmm.
for us to do our work
Mm-hmm.
the-
Yeah.
before we actually start doing all that. Like Salesforce actually provides you all the way, pretty much with all the resources that you can
Mm-hmm.
utilize to develop such kind of application on their platform and put it up in their market. So, but that's what I think what ProsperWorks should do. Maybe they should like like provide you all the resources
Hmm.
to actually do that.
Yeah,
And
I feel like I could build a pretty sustainable business on top of ProsperWorks by building some SaaS,
Mhm,
some apps, and really maintain those and scale them to clients versus me building my own infrastructure versus me building my own SaaS
mhm,
and turning into that. So I think that would be interesting for me. I'm hoping they go that way. I
mhm,
don't know if I would necessarily want it to be a market. I'm fine with if it just being like me being able to go in there and access it and implement it for a client and kind of goes through me. I'd be fine with that as well.
mhm.
It is tough deciding the market space, like going into an actual shared market. That is
Mhm.
definitely a difficult area to get into for the reasons that you mentioned.
So, what is that you use for development in the ProsperWorks, especially if you're how to develop? Like, let's say you're, I mean, besides the API, if you're how to make like a custom application in the ProsperWorks, like, what would be the preferable programming language that you would use?
So that's where it's interesting. When I am manipulating data, I'm just doing it in JavaScript, for example. But that's where the funny part with this is like you're not really building a custom solution in many different regards. Well, here's an example.
Mhm,
A client of ours in California, he has this loan exchange platform where banks can buy and sell, mortgages with other banks. And it was a very old system built in, an old PHP language, and it looked like it was like a 10-year-old platform. And
mhm,
he loved ProsperWorks. He loved it so much. And he contacted ProsperWorks and he said, I love your platform, but can we integrate my web app with
mhm,
ProsperWorks? And they connected me, my company, with him. So
mhm,
we said, we can't do it with your existing web app because you don't have any APIs or any functionality. What we can do
mhm,
is we can rebuild your web app. So that's what we did. We rebuilt his web app and built APIs in it. So
mhm,
that's where it's interesting. Like there is a web app and we have it tied directly into ProsperWorks. So you move them, someone registers for the site, they're created as a lead within
mhm,
ProsperWorks. And then they list something, they list a loan, a note on the site, they get converted and it creates an opportunity and it
mhm,
puts them in a stage within the pipeline. It moves them through. So now we have two databases. We have the ProsperWorks database that's doing a lot of the heavy lifting, that's doing a lot of the storing of data and reporting. But then we also have our own database for this company, and we're just tying them together. Like the opportunity has an ID, and we tie it to the loan ID in the web app. So you do one thing in the web app, it mirrors over to ProsperWorks and vice versa. So there's one example where you have to full out just build a web app and you store it, and you're doing it that way.
mhm. That's true. That's true. Yep. Uh, uh, I mean, the sort of a resource that ProsperWorks been providing you is pretty good. Like the way they're actually redirecting the customers that they are getting for consultations towards you. I mean,
Hmm.
actually, they're being pretty, like a customer friendly. There, they're actually providing helping the customers find the resources to, like in developing their application.
Yeah,
Uh,
at the end of the day, like their benefit is to have someone like this company here that in California that I built this deep integration with. He's probably never going to get off ProsperWorks, or at least he'll be on the platform for a very long time because it's so deeply integrated into his core company, his web app. So for ProsperWorks, what's the value there? Well, they now have a customer that the churn rate is going to be reduced. They're probably going to be a customer for 10 years now. So of course they want to connect these companies with companies like me. And I've built a relationship with them over the past 2.5 years now. I've been a partner of theirs for 2 years and I've been a customer for 2.5 years. So I have relationships with many of the people at the company when there were 20 employees and now there's 200 employees, and I've just always been involved with the API, the API leads and talking to them and giving feedback. Here's limitations, here's things that we need, here's things that I wish that we can do. And I've been so involved with them and vice versa that I've built that relationship there where now they know Alex knows this stuff with this. Let's recommend, this customer to him because we want to close this customer by the end of the month, but they need a custom integration. And ProsperWorks might not be the right fit unless someone like Alex can help them. So
mhm.
they're it's a win-win for both sides. They want to connect companies with me.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good because based on what I heard till now, I feel the web service integration is the complex part here. I guess like a lot of people are facing issue, like the customers of the ProsperWorks are the they actually need a lot, better solutions for the web service integration. And I feel that you're the like really good at this web service integration part. And from your end, I think you're also actually looking for a much better way to do that, from and looking towards the ProsperWorks.
Mm-hmm.
uh, I mean, based on what I heard from you, like I
Mm-hmm.
think there's a lot of configuration in the only development part, and the struggle would be only with the APIs, like you told me, like the web services part.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the complex issues come up with, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And
From based on what I heard from you,
and
I mean,
that's where it's so fun to be so close to their API team, because like I'm getting a sense of really, like, I understand the ProsperWorks API so well, and I've been beta testing their beta versions of it for so long that it's like, at the end of the day, I feel confident saying that I'm in the entire US, I am probably one of the best companies to come to, specifically if you want to do a custom integration, because I've just been dealing with it in their team so closely. And I feel like there's a value prop where I've been told by many people, go and sell Salesforce, go do this for Salesforce. You'll have larger clients, you'll do more for them, you can solve bigger
exactly, that's
problems.
true. That's totally true. Like,
But
I
then
mean,
it's like I'm just another, like, no one at Salesforce gives a shit about me. Like, that's what I keep coming
exactly,
back
that's true.
to.
That's true. I mean, like, you're just another guy doing the same thing that a lot of
Mhm.
like hundreds of other people are doing right now in
Mhm.
other companies. I mean, you wouldn't have your own special position out there, like for
Mhm.
ProsperWorks, like you told me, like if they actually get any client from the whole states, they would actually redirect them to you, because
Mhm.
they know that you're one really good person who can actually deal with the API integration at ease. I mean,
Mhm.
but in the sales, I don't really think Salesforce would actually recommend a particular person to do that unless that person
Really?
works with them.
Okay.
Maybe they would have a list of implementation partners.
Yeah, I'm sure,
Uh,
like the Blue Wolves of the world, right? Like Blue Wolf, I think they're a massive company.
yeah,
They have like
I mean, I wouldn't call a massive company, but they're, because you know what, like how long does a project last for you? Like Blue Wolf is like at a really fast pace. I mean, they just get done with the project like within 2 to 3 months. They just want to get things done pretty fast. Like if
oh
you go to the Blue Wolf side, they actually like mention the like a time period they took to complete the one project, one implementation.
hmm
So
they
I
just
think
want
they're
to
just
churn
trying
through.
to.
Do they just want to churn through, like do a 30 to 60 to $150,000 project and do it in a month? Like, are they just trying to churn
I mean,
through that
Blue Wolf,
quickly?
I mean, if you look at the Blue Wolf pricing, their pricing is like based on the time period. It's not about the type of implementation. It's based on the time period. If you see, like for 30 days, it's like 30 grand, or
Yep,
for
30
60.
grand to say. I think there's a 30 to 60 kind of model that they have. 30 grand
Exactly.
and
So,
60
so
grand. Yeah.
based on that, you would I mean, you can know that they're looking at the time base, like the time period, when about how fast they can actually complete the project implementation. So I mean, that's what they just want to get it done fast. It's not like
Hmm.
if you're doing this the same thing from the organization itself. Let's say I own Salesforce and you're a full-time employee for me, and you have to work on my implementation. You're going to be here for a really long time.
Hmm.
It's not something that's going to get done in 2 months or 3 months.
Yep. Yeah, it's
But
it's a constant evolution. You need to reevaluate it every, quarter
exactly.
or half. Yeah. Hmm.
So if you're gonna be consulting, go for a Blue Wolf consultation, and they would actually evaluate the whole thing, and they can tell you what they can actually do it, and how fast they can actually implement the whole thing. It's not like they're gonna be stay there and wait for the client's requirements, wait for the
Oh.
data, like the requirement gathering or all that. I don't think they would, because I mean, they would do that, of course. If you're paying them,
Yeah.
they're gonna stay
Hmm.
there for all the time.
Hmm.
But I don't think companies want to actually do that
Oh,
when they're
interesting.
actually taking the Blue Wolf's consultation.
Okay.
Because yeah, like let's say, like if I want to move from a classic to lightning experience, like a Salesforce classic to lightning, because a lot of companies are like actually moving from a classic to lightning right now.
Hmm.
And sometimes it takes a really long time. Like let's say a huge organization with like 10,000 users, they cannot just do the whole migration in like 3 months, because
Mm.
they are not going to push the whole thing at once. They're going to move part by part.
Yep.
And I don't think Blue Wolf is the right consulting partner for them, because I mean, Blue Wolf can do the job for part by part, but they want someone who I mean, I would suggest that company to hire someone who can stay with them
That's
for the
interesting.
whole
Oh.
process of migration, not for someone who can just gonna be stay there for 2 months and move that staying away and just move away from the company, and they're gonna have to hire someone else who have no clue what happened in the previous migration,
Mm.
and he's gonna have to start from the ground again, from the scratch again, to figure out like how the previous migration happened and all that.
Oh, okay.
So I
It's
feel,
hmm.
yeah. I mean,
That,
there are benefits of having the Blue Wolf in this kind of scenarios too, because they would actually have a log. I mean, you can go back to Blue Wolf anytime. It's not like they're going to totally abandon you
yeah.
after the first migration. They're going to still be there, and maybe after a couple of years you can go there, go back to them and tell them like this is what they've done previously, and if they can do it again, maybe in a much better way and all that.
Hmm.
And I mean, there are cons and pros for in both the ways, but I would always suggest getting someone, a full-time person, like a team for yourself, and stay there, as you know, like even after the migration, when it goes into production, you obviously need someone who can actually support the whole thing. You
Hmm.
don't want someone, a totally new guy there to support the whole
Yeah.
product like there.
So I guess the part of the thing that I'm trying to do with my company is really take this automation side of things, and so go into a company, help them understand their business process, and work through with them and how to make it more efficient, and then build out the system, and then build out automations and integrations, and have that built on our platform. So all the automations that happen are going on our platform. We're monitoring it. We're making sure that there aren't API errors and various things like that, or an API gets updated, we update it. So we're really trying to almost sell our automation platform as a product, but we really are a service consulting business. But when we do sign on with a client, we're planning on being, a partner of theirs for the next 5 to 10 years. We're not looking to just do one massive, $30,000 installer, $100,000 implementation, and just say, okay, we did what we had to do. All right, bye. It's like, no, we actually want you to tell us, like, hey, I want to do this, this, and this. What should we do? Do we need to add a bunch of custom fields? Do we need to add a new pipeline? Like, what do we do? We want to be that partner along the way with them, and work through problems with them, and go on quarterly, semi-annual analyses of like, how did things go the past 6 months? What are we planning on accomplishing the next 6 months? So a lot of it is actually business consulting tied in with everything.
um, I mean, you can I mean, I would say when the client approaches you for the consultation in the very beginning, you would
Hmm.
always give them an evaluation about an estimation, right? Like
Hmm.
how long usually the things take and all that, and you should actually figure out if the client is actually okay with that. I
Mm.
mean, because a lot of company organizations would have a budget limit. If they, I mean, that's like I mean, we see that in Salesforce too. A lot of companies don't really want to migrate their whole thing into the Lightning at the same time. That's what the whole process is. That maybe they allocate only a certain part of their budget to do the migration from Classic to Lightning. I think
Mm.
your clients would probably have some sort of a budget constraint,
Hmm.
and maybe when you give an evaluation, actually it's up to the client to actually decide if you want to go ahead with that or not. I mean, it's actually better to give them an estimation too.
Hmm.
I think pretty much all the consultation firms, they give an estimation, and that's why they hire a lot of I mean, pretty much whoever if they're letting a consultation firm do the implementation in their company, and anyone coming from the consultation firm to them are gonna be there only on contract.
Mm.
So they're given estimation, and the person would be working there for like a year or maybe 6 months. And once they're done with that, they're done with that.
Mm. Okay.
And and it's not like it's going away with the person who actually did that, because the consultation firm is gonna actually have the whole log of what exactly happened there.
No,
So
it's interesting, and I guess at the end of the day, the way that I'm thinking through it at the moment is the implementation I typically do a little bit lower, but it's really like a recurring aspect. So you're paying for ongoing consulting, ongoing maintenance, ongoing automation, and the value of the more automation we put into place, you get more value because you start seeing time being saved. You don't need to hire another employee because we just used automation to solve it, and there is a cost associated with it. We just saved you 50 grand, so this is going to cost you another 5 grand or 10 grand, and it's reasonable enough where there's the value exchange there. And I think that's really the goal, where I really want to grow with the clients that we take on board. So maybe they'll start at $1,000 or $1,200 a month, but from there they'll end up being $5,000 a month clients, $10,000 a month clients, because they've been able to scale on our platform with us helping support them.
Oh, so you were consulting from it. So, I mean, your consulting base is based on monthly pricing. So you have
Hmm.
like a monthly pricing and not the timely pricing.
That's
I mean,
correct. Yep.
I mean, let's say if you, let's say the Blue Wolf is actually implementing something. Okay, I mean, you know their pricing how it is like. Let's say it's like you've seen it like it's 30
30,
grand
60. Yeah.
for 30 days and 60 grand for 60 days.
Yep.
And if the company wants an after support after whatever it's been done, the implementation's been done. Let's say the company needs a little support from Blue Wolf. So Blue Wolf is gonna keep like a couple of people that are like of their team, like 2 people or 3 people of their team at
Hmm.
the client location. In when it goes to this phase of the cycle, it's not going to be a monthly charge though. Based on what I heard and based on my knowledge, I
Hmm.
think they're going to be charging you on a timely basis from them.
Oh,
They're
just
going
like
to
an
be
hourly. Hmm.
hourly, yeah, exactly, and that hourly is pretty expensive for the client.
Oh, for
It's a
sure.
lot expensive compared to the monthly packages that they got.
Oh, it totally makes sense. And I guess at the end of the day, I'm trying to get away from the idea of trading hours for time. So here's an example. When we take on a client for implementation, we typically charge $125 an hour. But that's only if they're signing on with us with an annual commitment with monthly and building that relationship with them on that automation platform. If a company just came to us and said, "Hey, will you do some integration or implementation or automation for us?" Our
Mhm.
hourly rate would be more like $500 an hour. But we don't even want to do that. We don't want to just do a one-off implementation and never speak to them again.
Mhm.
So we will heavily discount our hourly rate if they become a partner of ours, is kind of what we say it is, because we want to constantly be involved in their business. And that's where the recurring side comes into play. So, implementation is cheaper for you, but you're now a partner of ours and we both grow together and you get
Mhm.
consistent value from us being a partner. And that's kind of the way that I see it, where they sign a software license agreement with us for our automation platform. So like, yeah, they're buying ProsperWorks and these other things as well, but we have our own software license that we have them sign. And that's actually a significant part of the recurring revenue side of things. So if we had a client that wanted to just leave us and say, we want nothing to do with you guys anymore, we would have to go to a very, very baseline tier of like, okay, well, do you still want these automations to work? All these integrations we work to build, if you still want them to work, well, we still have to maintain them and support them, and there's a
Mhm.
cost associated with that. And
Okay.
that's kind of the way that there's like a stickiness factor with us, with our clients, but it's a constant value
I
exchange.
feel, I mean, this part of the consultation is more like into the business. I mean, it's more like a commercial business, though. I mean, where the client is, when the client gets more dependent on on you guys,
Hmm.
I think they got no other option. Like, I mean, no client would actually do that in the end. And maybe there might become some clients who might actually have a budget issues, and maybe they might back off and won't let you complete the whole thing.
Hmm.
But in this scenario, I don't. I mean, it's actually totally legit to charge so much.
Hmm.
But again, the client got no other option, uh, because he's actually totally dependent on you. He cannot just back off with things not in place, or maybe they're already in place and there's no one to actually take care of those
Hmm.
integrations. Or
And the goal is not
there's
to
no
screw them
one.
over. The goal is to give them as much value as we can consistently and keep showing it over time and helping them grow. And at a certain point, like I've had clients tell us like, oh, you saved us $20,000 this year, and we're for that specific client in addition to what they're paying us. So it's like there's actually a cost savings that they have that at the end of the day we could charge them an extra $10 or $20,000 a year because we're already saving them, say 20, 25, 30. But we're not doing that because at a certain point, like we want that unfair value exchange to be there, because that's why you're partnered with us, and there's the benefit. And if that doesn't exist, then it shouldn't keep going. Like if you're not getting benefit and value from our services, you shouldn't keep paying us monthly for it. Like there needs to be that value exchange in order for that to work.
Exactly. That's totally true. So, would the client have an opportunity to hire someone externally and into his organization as a full time, and who can actually take care of that support? And I mean, does ProsperWorks actually provide that kind of flexibility, or
Um,
make the client totally dependent on the implementation partner like you?
Yeah, so we document all of the processes that we put in place and all of the automation. So if they wanted to hire someone else internally to manage it, it's a matter
Mhm.
of them. They can build the integrations. Like, the documentation says, when this person hits this stage in the pipeline and these custom fields are checked, here's the APIs that need to trigger in Asana and in QuickBooks Online. Here's all the things that need to be done. So
Mhm.
they can go and do that on their own. Like if they really want to do it internally, we give you the documentation of what we built. We don't just hand you the platform over though. Like that's on our system. Like we can't just get like, oh, here, new person, here's our entire system. Just take it. Like we can't do that. So that's where it makes more sense definitely for the client to stay with us, and we understand their business, but we're not against doing that if it comes up, and there aren't limitations. It's just a matter of them building out a lot of these APIs and things like that with the other software that they're using. It's a gray area where I haven't had that come up much yet. It's not something that has happened significantly where
Mhm.
them paying us is significantly cheaper than it would ever be hiring a full-time employee to do it. Like a
Mhm.
lot of our clients are paying us less than 100 grand a year, and they would probably have to spend 100 grand to get someone internally to do it. So there's where it just doesn't make any sense. Why would you pay someone 100 grand when you only need to pay us 20 or 30 or 40 grand a year? Like that part, it just doesn't make sense. So I'm sure eventually,
That's so true. That's where a lot of companies take off the pressure off themselves by hiring the implementation partners, because they don't
Mhm.
want to go through the whole struggle of process of hiring a new person, and like providing the benefits or doing their whatever
Mhm.
the HR work and all that stuff. All they can do, all they have to do is just give the contract to the implementation partner, and it's their job from there. They're gonna get
Mhm.
how many resources they want from the implementation partner and get the job done. They don't really have to do any sort of the work.
Mhm.
They just get the person doing it. It's more just like uh, just like a handyman coming in and doing his job and going back.
Yeah.
That's it.
Absolutely.
Yep.
The whole concept of subcontracting versus, hiring and things like that. But
Yep.
yeah,
That says a
man.
lot.
Hey, this has been awesome. This has been a lot of
Yeah,
fun.
it was really nice talking to you, Alex. Yeah.
Yeah, most definitely. So, where can people go to find you if you want to be found? Is there are you big on Twitter or anything like that?
Well, I'm not really that big on social media yet, but I'm on Twitter. But all I do is just read the tweets from
Yeah,
people I like.
yeah.
I don't really tweet a lot, but I might maybe I'm just trying to increase my following. Maybe I'll just start. I mean, after this call, I think maybe I should just get in myself involved into this kind of things. Maybe I'll just start reading something professional too.
Yeah.
Uh,
No, I think it's important, like in my mind, to kind of build a community around this. I don't feel like there's enough people talking about this in the automation space and the CRM and business process. So that's where
mhm.
I'm trying to get the conversation started a little bit and meet people like you and talk and build a
Yep,
community around it because it's so fun to talk about this stuff, but you
yep,
need
yep.
people that think this way, right? So,
I totally agree. Yep, because I myself came to know a lot about a lot of other things, because I barely know anything about any other CRMs out there. Like, yeah,
mhm.
I came to know a lot about ProsperWorks now, like how how many multiple external tools you guys
Mhm.
been using, and how complex it is compared to
Yeah.
Salesforce and all that. So I mean, it was a really good intellectual discussion that we had today.
Yeah, cool. Definitely, man. All right, well, I'm sure we'll, keep in touch and definitely have another call in the future.
Sure, sure, definitely, Alex. All
Great.
right.
All right. This is Alex Bass with Analysis Paralysis. Thank you so much for listening to another episode. I'm planning on doing many more of these, so if you enjoy this, please, if you can make your way over to iTunes and leave a review. Unfortunately, I think that's one of the only areas that you can really review podcasts nowadays. So if you could do that, that would be greatly appreciated. You could just search for Analysis Paralysis. If you want to reach out to me, because maybe you want to possibly join me on an episode in the future, we can talk about business process automation, efficiency, CRM, maybe if you're a business owner that's implemented automation. So please reach out to me on Twitter. Alex H. Bass is my handle, or you can email me at abass@aparalysis.com. Thanks so much.